We need to talk about a military operation in the Caribbean that has absolutely set Washington on fire. It's raising some huge questions about war powers, about due process, and, really, the basic rules of engagement. Just listen to this. That's a quote from Representative Jim Himes, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, and he's talking about a classified video he had just watched, a video of a U.S. military strike that's now at the very center of this whole debate. So what in the world happened on that day? Let's try to piece this together, based on some incredible reporting and analysis from folks like historian Heather Cox Richardson.
Okay, so here's the timeline. On September 2nd, the U.S. military hits a small boat. 9 of the 11 people on board are killed right away. But that wasn't the end of it. For the next 41 minutes, U.S. officers just watched as 2 survivors clung to the wreckage. And then, they ordered a second strike, which killed both of them.
Now, what was the official reason for that second strike? The administration says it wasn't about killing the survivors. They claim the goal was to destroy the vessel itself, which they called a military target. But as you can imagine, that explanation is now under a microscope.
And this is where we get to the real heart of the controversy, right? The legal, the ethical arguments swirling around this. How did the administration justify it, and what are the legal experts saying?
This really breaks down the whole legal fight. On one side, the administration is claiming that the U.S. is basically in a formal, armed conflict with drug cartels. And if that's true, then the men on that boat could be considered combatants. But a lot of legal experts are pushing back hard. They're saying, whoa, hold on, this isn't a declared war. Civilians, even if they're doing something illegal, are not enemy combatants. And they're also pointing to the War Powers Resolution, which says Congress has to sign off on this kind of military action.
So with these 2 completely different legal interpretations, you end up with the most serious question you can ask in a situation like this. That second strike, the one that killed 2 men who were essentially shipwrecked, does that constitute a war crime?
And the definition here is really, really specific. A war crime can include killing people who are hors de combat. That's a French legal term that literally means outside of combat. Think wounded soldiers, people who have surrendered, or people who are shipwrecked. So the key question, the multi-million-dollar question, is this. Could 2 unarmed men clinging to a piece of wreckage in the middle of the ocean really be considered an imminent threat?
This is where the official stories started to get, well, a little shaky. At first, defense officials said, oh, the men were still a threat, they were communicating with other boats. But then, when Admiral Frank Bradley, the guy who ordered the strike, briefed Congress, he actually admitted they couldn't communicate. So what was his new reason? He said the boat was being held up by packages of cocaine, and the survivors might have floated away on them to continue their drug trafficking.
And the reaction to that explanation? Well, one source who was there described it to CNN reporters in a pretty blunt way. They just called it fucking insane. And that quote really tells you a lot about the deep skepticism that's surrounding the official story, even from people on the inside. As you can probably guess, this briefing set off a major backlash, and it was bipartisan. Lawmakers from both parties who saw that footage and heard that testimony were just deeply, deeply disturbed. You had Republican Senator Rand Paul, who put it in terms of fundamental American justice. He basically said there's a difference between accusing someone and that person actually being guilty. It's called due process. It's called the presumption of innocence. And he argued the administration was just ignoring all of that.
And on the other side of the aisle, you had Senator Jack Reed, the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee, who was just as alarmed. He said the briefing confirmed his worst fears and demanded a full-blown investigation, starting with releasing the complete, unedited video.
But I should say it wasn't unanimous. Some lawmakers, like Senator Tom Cotton, did come out and publicly defend what the administration did. So you can see the clear political battle lines being drawn.
And here's the thing you have to understand. That incident on September 2nd, it wasn't just a one-off. It was actually just the start of a much bigger, ongoing operation.
Look at this number. As of early December, the U.S. has done this more than 20 times, striking boats that the administration says are run by narco-terrorists. And the human toll is pretty stark. At least 87 people have been killed.
Now, this aggressive new policy has some very vocal supporters. For instance, Andrew Colvett from Turning Point USA posted this on social media, basically saying that every time someone criticizes administration official Pete Hegseth, it makes him want to see another boat blown up.
And what happened next is, well, it's pretty unbelievable. Hegseth himself quoted that post and replied, "Your wish is our command, Andrew. Just sunk another narco boat."
And then, a little while later, U.S. Southern Command confirmed another strike had happened, killing 4 people. This created a direct, public line between a social media post and a deadly military action.
So, all of this leaves us with a really critical question, doesn't it? These strikes are being sold as a necessary part of a war on drugs. But when you look at what happened on September 2nd, the changing story from officials and the alarm bells ringing from both parties in Congress, you have to ask, at what point does a war on drugs become a war on due process itself?